Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you yet again another ThunderCats episode review right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, as always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's ThunderCats episode review, and this is Season 1, Episode 24, entitled The Soul Sever. In this week's episode, the ThunderCats search for the third stone is put on hold due to repairs that must be done to the Thunder Tank. This leads Lionel, Tigra, and Panthro to a deserted scrapyard where they discover that apparently all of these large scraps of tech are being discarded from the sky. This leads Lionel, Tigra, and Panthro to believe that the Book of Omens is in fact correct when it is pointing them upwards in order to find the third stone. Now they have reason to believe that whatever is beyond the clouds, that's where they'll find the third stone. However, before they can do that, they soon find themselves under attack by a group of robots known as the Necromantics, who do unspeakable damage to the Thunder Tank. I mean, they pretty much raid it. They raid and pillage it. And in order to get the tank back up to speed, back up to where it needs to be, of course they have to follow these mysterious robots, which leads them to their meeting with the Soul Sever. Now, the Soul Sever is a mad scientist who is obsessed with trying to find a way in which to take a organic soul and place it into a man-made mechanical vessel. And his whole quest for doing this leads Lionel, Tigra, and Panthro kind of in his crosshairs. And in the end, they both, Lionel, Tigra, Panthro, and the Soul Sever, they all learn a valuable lesson in the misuse of technology, the misuse of science, and the horrors that can transpire through that abuse. So with the brief summary out of the way, just my thoughts on this week's episode. Number one, this week's episode was a very good episode. I was highly engaged in it. I thought it was really well written. I thought it came completely out of nowhere. But it was a nice change of pace, and it was a nice reprieve from the last couple of episodes we've been getting, because you all know this is the first time I've posted an episode review in like 3 weeks. And like I said, the past 2 episodes, they haven't been bad, but they've been filler. Somewhat lighthearted filler, which was another thing I liked about this week's episode. This was a very dark episode. In terms of content and themes, this week's episode was extremely dark compared to some of the other ones. You're talking about, this week's episode feels like it came straight out of an H.P. Lovecraft novel. You're talking about a story that focuses on the pros and cons of technology and the horrors that can transpire due to the abuse of technology. We're talking about the classic mad scientist story. We're talking about, this is, for all intent and purpose, the Reanimator. This is Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. All that theme that takes place in this week's episode, I loved, I enjoyed, and I was surprised because let's face it, this is a kid's show, and while for the most part, most kids will only take this story as, oh, it's kind of like Frankenstein, because a lot of kids haven't read H.P. Lovecraft, they haven't read Edgar Allan Poe, they hadn't read Edgar Rich Burroughs, they haven't read some of these, some more dark and science fiction type stories. So of course they won't get it, but I think adults who see this episode will, they'll get that. And yeah, it's surprising for a kid's show. Another thing I liked about this week's episode was the fact that they readdressed Lionel's interest in technology. Remember, in the first episode, in the premiere, we found out that Lionel was very interested in technology. We didn't get much reasons why, And to this point, we still don't have much reasons why. But what we did have was Lionel commenting on his change in perspective of how he values technology. Before, he thought it was something that was fascinating, something that he thought had so much potential for the advancement of his people, something that he thought was a legend, a myth, if you will. You know, in a way, Lionel looked to technology the same way that we look to magic. And in this week's episode, we got to see him comment on while he's starting to understand why their ancestors abandoned technology, why they gave it up, and he's starting to understand the difficulties that come with technology, because technology is not like magic, or actually rather within the context of this series, maybe it is. Now that I think about it, maybe it is kind of like magic. You know, there are stories in which magic can be used for good, it can be used for evil, and even when it is used for good, it can have negative side effects and repercussions. Technology kind of deals with the same thing, so Lionel is starting to understand that. And at the end of this week's episode, he makes the comment where he understands. He's like, I know that there are people who use it for good, I know that there are people who use it for evil, but I cannot blame technology and science itself for how people use it. You see what I'm saying? And I think that shows a level of maturity in Lionel. That shows a level of that shows a level of learning in Lionel. You know, a sense of knowledge that he has acquired. My final comments on this week's episode would have to talk about the character. Would have to talk about the character of the Soul Sever. Number one, I thought he was a very intriguing character. Throughout the episode, I found myself wanting to know more and more about him. And to be honest, I know this is a long shot, but I would really like to see him in future episodes. You know, perhaps, you know, Mum Ra could capture him and force him to create a robotic army for him. Something along those lines. I know that's highly unlikely because I think there's only 2 episodes left in the series. Because as you all will recall, I made the notion that or I made the announcement that apparently ThunderCats has not been renewed for a second season, so this may be the only season we get, and there's only 2 episodes left. But what I'm saying is, the Soul Sever was a very intriguing character that I would have liked to see more of. I thought he was very well written. His voice actor, I thought, did a very good job. So that's that. So that's going to do it for this week's review. I would go ahead and probably give this episode 4.5 out of 5 stars. I mean, I would put this amongst the best episodes, definitely. I definitely put this amongst the best episodes. So that's going to do it for this week's ThunderCats episode review. Keep an eye out later today for my Legend of Korra episode review, and later tonight for my Game of Thrones episode review. And that'll do it for me. This has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I'm signing off, and until next time, peace.